So Crackdown 3 previews hit the internet today. A whole bunch of different websites and YouTubers were able to play the game at press events and give their early impressions about the single player and the Wrecking Zone multiplayer that the game has on offer. And as someone who's read through a lot of the coverage, I can't help but think that, wow, this is really a mixed bag. There'll be one outlet who says the single player is the star of the show and the multiplayer is an afterthought and not worth playing, but then another outlet that's like, hey, the multiplayer is what's really good about this title and the single player is just an afterthought. And even IGN had really nothing good to say about the game in regards to the single player and the multiplayer. Ryan McCaffrey and Destin Legary definitely seemed to be underwhelmed and almost kind of went as far as ripping the game apart a little bit during their coverage, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that. What's going on, guys? Randall Thor 19, Man with a Million, back again with another video. Now, man, if you want to get a whole bunch of impressions, they're out there. GameSpot, IGN, VG247, Game Informer, Polygon, they all have different articles going over what they thought. And it's really a mixed bag, really subdued in my opinion. When I was reading through all the different coverage here, I definitely felt like I was being prepared for a game when they finally review it, before the release on February 15th. It seemed like they were getting, or at least preparing their audience for a game that would potentially rate in the 60s or the 70s. Xbox really hasn't had a great stretch of exclusives the last couple years outside of the Forza games. And it definitely seems like Crackdown 3 might be in the ballpark of Sea of Thieves and State of Decay in the high 60s, just based on some of these previews. Now, IGN specifically, they really didn't have anything good to say outside of, hey, it seems like it's going to be pretty addicting to collect those orbs, which, yeah, judging from these videos, it definitely looks like collecting orbs is going to be something that I, look forward to doing. I really like Crackdown 1 and 2 for that aspect. And I've been looking forward to this game, even though I've made some videos in the past criticizing Microsoft about how they've handled the marketing and how they've handled showing this game off. I'm still looking forward to playing it, but some of the stuff here is kind of weird. Like, for instance, IGN's article even has some console warring clickbait within the article itself that I just had to shake my head at and thought, you know what? I thought Ryan McCaffrey was a little bit better than this. The title of IGN's article is Crackdown 3 Hands-On, part science experiment, part video game. The cloud finally comes to life, but in practice, it doesn't seem to help make Crackdown 3 a great multiplayer game. And the first couple paragraphs talks about how the cloud, or the Wrecking Zone multiplayer, was basically a Trojan horse for the cloud power multiplayer destruction that Microsoft bragged about early in this generation, and that basically they wanted to make a game that was using all that stuff, and Phil Spencer or somebody else said, well, why don't we do it with Crackdown? Which immediately raises a bunch of red flags to me. Like, the game should be a quality game and fun for first and foremost, rather than like, we have this technology here, let's try to find a game where we can build it around. But I mean, that's just going off of like the quotes here in the interview that Ryan McCaffrey talks about. He mentions that also the single player campaign wasn't part of the original plan at all. It only came later, which, man, if Crackdown 3 was only supposed to be a multiplayer filled destruction game, well, geez, I am glad for one that they added the Terry Crews to the single player, because that's really what I'm looking forward to. The multiplayer might be cool, and from what I've seen, it looks like it might be fun for a couple hours, but my interest is in the single player, as I love collecting the orbs and basically becoming a superhero. But I don't know, like, reading the rest of the article, he goes on to say it's very no frills in just about every regard, neither great nor bad. It's like, okay, and he's talking specifically about the multiplayer here. He says that the moment-to-moment combat is rather standard fare. Attacks are lock-on based, as you don't want to left trigger over your target until you know you can get clean shots off. And he goes on to say that the hook, of course, is supposed to be the cloud-powered destruction, watching the buildings fall, and how you use that to your technical advantages. He goes on to say that Joseph Staten said that the Wrecking Zone multiplayer is the equivalent of 12 Xbox Ones in the cloud running the game or running the multiplayer. That's how much power is being used. But Ryan McCaffrey says that's all well and good, but my main issue after playing it was that Crackdown 3 doesn't deliver any weight or impact behind its destruction. Yes, you can smash up the place, but buildings break apart like they're made of cardboard or styrofoam. It doesn't add anything to the experience. But perhaps other first-party Xbox studios will come up with compelling uses for the tech down the road. So, I mean, obviously, reading the article, watching the video, Ryan McCaffrey's not enamored whatsoever with the multiplayer. And watching some of the footage, I do get his sense of cardboard and styrofoam, right? It doesn't really look like these tons, like these buildings that weigh tons, crumble like you would expect to see an actual building crumble. It does seem like the agents are really going through something that's not very solid or concrete, but maybe that's my just impression from watching the video. You know, I can't wait to get my hands on the game and play it for myself and make my own opinion. This video was just more just talking about what others were saying about Crackdown 3. So not much to be good found from IGN regarding the Wrecking Zone. So what did he say for the single player? He says he didn't get to play much of it. He says it's aiming to be goofy and over the top, that he hopes Terry Crews is in it a lot. But, and this is the console war in quote here, like, I don't know why you need to say this in an article, because it doesn't really, I don't know, when people say the console war is perpetrated by, you know, Xbox fans and PlayStation fans on Twitter, they're right to a certain degree, but sometimes you get these reputable video game websites that kind of delve into it. So Ryan McCaffrey says that there's nothing here that the Xbox faithful are likely to be boastfully thrusting into the faces of their Sony fan friends. But that's not to say it can't or won't be a fun experience. It just didn't wow me. It felt, and in the non-literal, yes, I know it's running in 4K sense, looked like an Xbox 360 game. So there's a couple things I wanted to say about that. We'll talk about the fact that he thinks it looks like an Xbox 360 game. I've seen comparisons between Crackdown 1 and the 360, Crackdown 2 and the 360, and Crackdown 3 on the Xbox One. And to say that Crackdown 3 looks like a 360 game is wrong. Now, of course, you can say it plays like Crackdown, which 100% it does. And if that's what you meant to say, that it plays like Crackdown and therefore it's like a 360 game, then I would agree with you. It definitely has that gameplay mechanic, that dated gameplay mechanic extending all the way back to 2007. Doesn't really look like much has changed in that regard. However, the visual aspect, how it looks, it definitely looks like a current gen game. It may not look like the best photorealistic game like Gears of War or Uncharted or God of War or anything, but it definitely looks like a current gen game. So I kind of felt he was a little hyperbolic there, maybe like over-exaggerating about how it looks like a 360 game. And then he is right in the sense that he's not saying it can't or won't be fun. I mean, that's going to be subjective up to each person, right? Someone who thinks it's terrible, like we have here in the previews themselves. Some people say it's not fun, some people love it, some people hate the multiplayer, some people love it. I mean, everybody is going to have a different experience. But the quote there about how this game isn't going to make Xbox fans throw it in the face or brag about it to their Sony fans really didn't need to be there. Now, for sure, some Xbox fans, if Crackdown 3 is great, will throw it in the face of PlayStation fans, just like some PlayStation fans throw the success of God of War and Spider-Man into Xbox fans. But there's really just a small minority of players. You know, when I see there's a great game, regardless if it's on PlayStation or Xbox, my first thought is to enjoy it and tell other people about how good the game is. Not to get on Twitter, not to make a YouTube video and saying, haha, you Xbox or you ponies, you can't enjoy this great game that's only available on my platform. I think it was a dumb comment by Ryan McCaffrey, who is the Xbox guy at IGN. I'm going to take a look at some of the other outlets' coverage of the game, and you'll definitely get a sense here of how subdued even the positives are, and how one outlet will say the multiplayer is great and the next will say the multiplayer is horrible, right? So you have Game Informer, they say Crackdown 3 has a lot to prove, but if its best quality is feeling like a newer, tighter version of the Xbox 360 original, then that might not be the worst thing. Polygon says, after playing Crackdown 3 for a couple hours, I come away feeling vaguely underwhelmed. It's not that Microsoft's open world shooter is unenjoyable or bad, it's sort of fun, but it doesn't feel like a creatively daring AAA exclusive, it feels like a compromise. GameSpot says, Crackdown 3's destructive multiplayer is a shining example of how technical innovation and game development go hand in hand. Windows Central says, Crackdown 3 is shaping up to be a faithful follow-up to its predecessors, retaining much of the franchise's prior successes. Returning fans should find enjoyment, though it's not poised to solve Microsoft's ongoing first-party woes. PC Gamer says Crackdown 3's campaign is good old-fashioned mayhem. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for the multiplayer. VentureBeat says Crackdown is a lot like living in a comic book. You are always awash in a sea of colors, and you have no shortage of guns, ammo, and goons to shoot. If you're looking for more than that, like an emotional story, this probably isn't your game. It looked pretty polished, and I saw no significant bugs though, and I hope they keep on working on reducing the loading times. Crackdown 3 will be good for a laugh and blowing things up. To see how long that will last, we'll have to play the final game. 24/7 says Wrecking Zone is a fun mode, however, and it feels like a perfect competitive multiplayer fit for the gleefully over-the-top, super-powered Crackdown universe. I liked it a great deal, as I did Crackdown 3 in general, though it's a neutered delivery of promises made far too early in this console generation when, for a moment, it looked like it'd be truly something revolutionary. So like I said, you can definitely see the varying reactions there from outlet to outlet. Some like the multiplayer, some don't, some enjoy the single player, some don't, and even the ones that do enjoy Crackdown 3 or like what they've said are incredibly subdued about the positives of it. So when the reviews come in close to release, I'm not expecting this game to get really high marks. But at the end of the day, I think Crackdown fans will enjoy the game. I'm going to decide for myself when I get to play it. But I just wanted to let you guys know exactly, how the media is viewing the game right now. Anyways, guys, that's the video for now. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, let me know what you think about it in the comments. Hit the like button. Share this out on Twitter and Facebook. I'd greatly appreciate it. Hit that sub button if you're new, and hit that notification bell if you always want to be notified when I drop new content. Thank you guys so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it, and I'll see everybody in the next video. Later, guys.